Watertown Board of Adjustment meeting. Brandy, can we get a roll call?
Yes. Kays.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Dolly.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Spire.
Here.
And Brink, Oletsky, and Hanson are absent. We have a quorum, and with the conditional use on the agenda, we will have a 4 out of 6 vote for an approval.
Thank you, Brandy. Moving on to item 3 is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We'll move forward with the agenda. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 10th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on those meeting? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes will carry. Moving on to item 5A on the regular agenda is the conditional use. Brandy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Blake. So this is a conditional use request for a caretaker's residence and a campground at the property addressed 1808 5th Street Southeast in the C3 Highway Commercial District. So this is along Highway 81. It has existed as a campground. We were not able to find that a conditional use had ever been granted, most likely before zoning ordinance was in place. So that is why the request for a campground is before you, because the initial request in the application was for a caretaker's residence. Because the property owner would like to move the existing single-family residential home off of the northern parcel. Go if we get that right. So the existing home that's on the property today would like to move that off and then move another home in. And so then we would consider that a caretaker's residence to the campground business that would be taking place on the property. And also I did include some facts on the existing campground and in looking at the current campground ordinance, and that the applicant is in compliance with the ordinance requirements for a campground and is actually quite a bit under what would be allowed for the maximum density. So there are also 2 parcels that make up this property, and upon building permit issuance, we would have him replat, and that is just through our ordinance requirements as well. You could look at making that a condition as the board. And then the northern parcel, so each parcel though do meet the minimum requirements in the C3 Highway Commercial District. And then as far as the campground goes, for each campsite needing 2,000 square feet, then he could have a total of 40 campsites on these 2 properties, but currently has 15 to 20. So he is in compliance with all of the campground requirements. And with that, so these will be 2 separate actions, one for the campground, one for the caretaker's residence. So with that, I will stand by for any questions.
Brandy?
Thank you,
Mr.
Brandy.
Chair. Where does the, is there a dump station there? Where does the sewage from these campers go?
We may need to open the public hearing and ask the applicant that, but
Okay, I'll wait.
Just one question before we do that. So currently, this is considered a legal non-conforming property, is that right? And the triggering action and why we're looking at a conditional use is because of the building permit application?
yes.
And this would bring the existing use essentially into compliance?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So they would be getting a moving permit to move the current, so they're really just trying to replace the house that's on the property. So, but then because, well, and then 2, you'll notice in Plan Commission, at the Plan Commission meeting, we will be looking at a campground ordinance amendment that would allow for this, but it's just timing, where this all came up where it also would delay the applicant if he would, wait for the ordinance amendment, but.
So there would need to be a condition on the permit that it would have to have, that the ordinance would have to be amended for the conditional use permit to be effective.
No. So he is applying for the conditional use as it stands today. He's zone C3, so he's asking for the campground and the caretaker's residence. So as it is zoned in the ordinance today is what he would comply with, but then once the new ordinance, if that would be approved, then he would have to be in compliance with that.
So I'm sorry, what is it that he's not complying with today as is?
He is, it's just that he needs a conditional use.
Okay. So it's just because he's never had a conditional use, that's why we're having it today. Okay.
Yep.
I misunderstood, thank you.
Yep, it was just when we were doing research with the application for the caretaker's residence, that then we realized that we didn't have a conditional use for the campground on record, so that's why we brought them both forward, so that the property is in complete conformance.
Thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this one.
I'd like to ask that previous question on where do people dump the sewage from the campers?
Is the applicant here?
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
We're all on city sewer out there.
If you could just come up,
Yep, we're in city sewer.
we'll have you state your name in the microphone for the record.
Okay, can I sit down?
Yep.
All right.
So I'm sorry, so you're saying that each individual camper is plugged into is into the sewer?
Yes, sir.
Is it-
My name is William Schmidt. I've owned the property for 10 years, and all the sites are on direct city sewer.
Okay.
Is there any additional questions for the applicant?
What is the other building?
There's two shop buildings.
Is that the one are you referring to this one, Diana?
Right.
So it looks like a
Yeah.
garage, two garages?
There's two garages, Jim.
And how does that fit into the campground ordinance, Brandy?
So this would be a caretaker's residence where it would be like an outbuilding and also legal nonconforming, because assuming that this at one point, I mean, this was just used as a residential property, and then the campground to the south, most likely.
Are both buildings staying? The garage, the detached garage and the,
Yes.
and then you're going to also have a caretaker's residence that you're adding?
Yep, so the single-family home will go away, and then a new one will replace it.
And is it hard surface now? Because that is one of the requirements to have hard surface roads through the park or the campsite?
It doesn't appear
It's
so.
not hard surface now. That's part of the plan, though. It can be.
Well, it
But
has
that's
to be.
also something in the ordinance amendment that we're looking at revising. And this ordinance, it is coincidental timing because we were working on the campground ordinance as we were working through the CL district ordinance amendment. So that's where it's just by coincidence.
But if we give him this today, we could make him hard surface that because he's applying for the existing ordinance.
Sure.
Okay. So my next question is, how many outbuildings can he have on a campsite? Or is that another issue we're going to deal with? You know, how many, additional structures can you have, Brandy?
So, I mean, the legal nonconforming would be it. You can't do additional accessory structures with the campground. And then the caretaker's residence is a single dwelling unit.
But you were calling that Quonset or whatever it is, the bigger shed, you were calling that caretaker residence?
No,
No, that's just storage of some sort.
yeah, so it's an existing accessory structure.
And then how large is the new caretaker residence going to be?
Approximately 1,700 square feet.
So are we treating this, what is the principal use for these two lots? It's the campground, right?
Yep.
And then, so the caretaker is actually an accessory use to the campground? Is that how you would envision that? Because
Yeah.
I can't have a caretaker without a principal use, right? 'Cause
Right.
So that would be the accessory. If the campground on the southern lot was to go away, and we decided campground is not, Bill, you're not going to do campground on the south, what would be your intent on a future use of that property if you had your druthers?
Well, what my plans for the future are that property will never be split up. The caretaker's residence and the campground go hand in hand.
Would we be wanting to marry those two lots together as a development lot agreement so that those two, that's what it would be?
Well, what I said earlier that he would replat it into one lot.
Okay, replat, I'm sorry.
That's correct.
Okay.
Brandy, I have a question. Each campsite shall contain at least 2,000 square feet. And right where your marker is, there are those two, there's a red car there beside it. Does that mean each of those individual campers have 2,000 square feet? They look awfully close together.
So each site needs 2,000 square feet. So
Correct.
now there's probably, I can measure that there'd be 4,000 square feet here. If somebody is, say, camping together and they want to put their campers closer, they can. But each site just needs,
So what is, I guess, what is the area of those 5 campers right there on that little, where your queue is at?
so we're at 3,000 there. Okay, so we'll do. Oh. It wanted to glitch out there. Okay, that's.
And Bill, part of what I'm asking about is because it's going to help us in our discussion moving forward on the planning commission side on what the size should be. And so I'm just trying to get a visual using yours right now.
All right, so we have 78, 73, and there's 5 campers. So they're at 1,500, which is what we're amending in the ordinance amendment, actually. Or
That
Well,
doesn't
we're
go-
not,
proposing.
we're not
We're
there
not
yet.
doing that, Brandy.
I know, that's fine,
Discuss that.
but
We're not there
Well,
yet.
if I could, Mr. Chairman, just to provide a little bit of clarity here, the ordinance amendment that Brandy keeps referring to is an action item on the Planning Commission agenda tonight, where we are amending some of the terms and definitions within the campground ordinance. And that's why that keeps getting brought up. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the audience and for the board, that our campground ordinance is being amended or proposed to be amended tonight. But one of those amendments is to reduce the size of each campground parking pad from 2,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet, which allows for a little bit higher density in any campground within the city limits. And the other one was changing out, the other significant amendment, I should say, was changing out the hard surfacing paving requirements in a campground to allowing things like crushed concrete or recycled asphalt surfacing for the drive aisles within a campground. Those are a couple of them that will be up for discussion later on in the Planning Commission meeting. But again, you are correct. The action you take right now on this conditional use permit technically could fall under the ordinance as written today, unless you wanted to put the caveat in there that it would meet any subsequent amendment that's up for consideration later tonight.
I guess the question I'm having and I'm struggling with is if we're applying today's rules and it's a
Yes.
2,000 square foot rule, those 5 trailers there do not meet the requirement? Am I doing the math wrong?
No, as parked, they do not, but what I don't know is if there are formal stalls for each of those 5, as far as utility hookups and things like that, or not. Maybe there's only 4 hookup locations within that footprint, and it does meet the minimum requirement today. And there's just an extra camper parked in there. I'm not sure of those details.
Right. Because otherwise, that would be something more of a variance akin to, if that's the case, if we're approving something based upon the footprint there today.
yeah, so that's something that, it would be that those could be brought into conformance. I'm not sure, how many hookups are there here?
There's 4, there's 2 on this end here. So there's 4 total.
But you have, there's 5 campers in this picture. I know this picture's dated.
Yep, that's the way the campground was developed.
And just to be clear, and thank you, Heath. So as we're looking at this conditional use request today, we are looking at current ordinance.
So-
We're applying the current ordinance for campgrounds.
Yes, if approved for this conditional use, they would have to be in compliance with the ordinance. And so we can look at this and make the decision based upon what the ordinance is currently, not necessarily what's in front of us later tonight.
Yes.
And that's where I'm getting to the point that if we're basing on the current ones, we also should be requesting some sort of a variance because a few of those places don't meet.
So there's plenty of lot area where it can be met. And so the picture, like he said, there's 4 services there. So with the lot area that's within where those 5 campers are, it would meet it for 4. So we can make sure that it's brought into compliance. We can get a site plan with the building permit to make sure that all of the campsites are meeting our ordinance.
But
As
current-
this
but
has never been
currently we
looked at.
Currently, we have 5 campers using 4 services, so 1 camper is not hooked up to sewer.
Some of the sites have double drops on them. I didn't do that myself. The previous owner did that, so that's why there's 5 there instead of 4.
I don't think double drops are allowed here, are they?
That was my question. What is the standard for
I mean,
individual?
each house, each needs to have a separate sewer connection, even if you put a bathroom in your garage, you don't run it through your house. If the garage is separate, it has a separate connection to the city sewer. Isn't that correct, Brandy?
No. If it's separate, like primary uses, then it would be. But if you're doing a garage, you can still run that off your sewer because it's accessory to your primary.
But this is not accessory. This is a specific house that's double hooked. Right
I
here.
think the campsites. So I don't know what the regulations are there for a campsite. If it's, I mean, I don't think that we get that specific in our ordinance.
But
I
what
think the
city
principal
would
governance
do-
here, though, is around the campsites and the requirement around the square footage per unit, right? And so we don't necessarily even need to be concerned with the sewer portion of it as long as they're following the regulations regarding
I
square
guess I'm
footage.
looking at it as a safety issue, and a sewer connection is a safety issue, and accessing the sanitary sewer is a safety issue. It would just be my concern that that had been set up and approved appropriately by wastewater or the inspector or whoever it is to make sure that's a good, valid, sound connection. So
Yeah.
for me, it's a safety issue.
Yeah, and at the time of building permit issuance, we can make sure, we can go and inspect what is existing.
Well, yeah, so what Blake is saying basically is they're too close together, so one would have to go anyway.
Right.
So the double hookup can't occur. William, is it your intent to add more then? More sites?
No.
Even though we're going to make you hard surface that, you're not going to need to recoup that money?
No, I like the campground the size it is right now. There's some green space there, and that's what everybody likes, and that's how it's going to stay.
Okay.
And what's the number, Bill, on of units you have there right now?
I think we've got 18 units in there right now.
If a condition of 20 was placed on you, you wouldn't object to that?
No. No.
Liam, just want to clarify, Brandy mentioned earlier that you're moving your dwelling. Is it going to be a manufactured home or are you building?
No. That will be a custom house,
Okay,
1 level, 1,700 square feet.
thank you.
And since we're dealing with C1, does that need to sit in a different location, Brandy, than the house is now,
This is
or
C3.
C3?
We'll make sure that it meets setbacks.
But I'm just curious, that is further back than I assume than where it's sitting? Or not necessarily?
No, well, so he's at 35, he would have to be 40. But we would approve that when we looked at the site plan for the building permit.
So as it stands, we're not asking for any variance here right now. We're asking for approval of the conditional use, and whatever conditional use is approved, he'll have to abide by the requirements.
I have one more question. So if we do approve this with the 2,000 square feet and, the hard surfacing and whatnot, and there is a new ordinance eventually passed that adjusts these, could that be administratively approved, that he would now fall under the new ordinance? Or is what we decide here tonight?
If you would make
think I
it a condition, then that would stand with the acceptance of this use. However, if the ordinance amendment is approved, it wouldn't make, well, I guess it's all about how that ordinance amendment discussion goes. Because if that's acceptable, then why wouldn't,
I would recommend that we, stay to the fact that we want him to meet the current ordinance or meet ordinance as written. So whether or not we amend it, as long as he's meeting ordinance and not asking for a variance.
Well, that's exactly my point.
I'm going to
If
craft,
we want him to meet this, can it be changed
I'm going to
administratively?
craft a motion that I think might address that.
Thank you, Todd.
Is there any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. I do have the public hearing open. Is there anybody else to speak on behalf or against this agenda item?
Mr. Chair.
I'll close the public hearing.
One quick question for staff. Did we receive any notification from adjoining property owners?
no.
Okay, thank you. So we need to have two motions on this, one for the campground and one for the the worker house.
Caretaker's
Caretaker
residence.
house.
Yep.
I'm going to start with the campground because I think that's the principal use, right? So I'm going to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for the campground on the two lots that will be platted into a single lot with the following conditions. One, the maximum number of campers to be located on the newly created parcel would be 20. Two, that there would be inspection to make sure that the sanitary sewer is being adequately addressed. I don't know who does that, but somebody at the city would do that. Three, that the interior roads would be paved per ordinance. And four, if there are subsequent changes to the city's code, not only tonight, but henceforth, the site would be eligible to comply with those new regs. Does that make sense?
It does.
Eligible to apply for a variance.
Well, I'm just saying if it goes to 1,500, he's still capped at 20. We say it's paved surface, but if it gets changed to millings, then he could use millings. That's what I'm saying.
Second.
I have a motion by Kays and a second by Colhane. Any additional comments or discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
All right. Spire. Yes. Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Ford.
No.
Dolly.
Yes.
Cohane.
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 no. That motion will carry. We'll need another motion for the caretaker residence.
So moved.
A motion to approve a caretaker residence by Colhane.
Second.
Second by Spire. Any additional discussion? Roll call vote.
Kays.
Yes.
Cohane.
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Spire.
Yes.
All in favor, that motion will carry. Item 6 on the agenda is the open public comments. Is there anybody here to speak to the Board of Adjustment tonight on an item that wasn't on the agenda?
Is going to do Plan Commission.
For Board of Adjustment specifically?
Plan Commission.
We'll do Plan Commission immediately following closure of this, okay.
And
Is there any new business, Brandy?
no.
Any old business?
Nope.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned as the Board of Adjustment. We'll reconvene as the Plan Commission momentarily.